Thank you very much, sir.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with each and every one of you. And I guess you know that the NSA is tracking me. That's why the phones went off. They're always trying to see where I am. And I tried to arrange for a translator because I'm from Georgia and y'all kind of talk a little funny up here in North Dakota. And it's my first time being here in North Dakota. And I want to thank you so very much. Thanks to Retha, I got a nice little run route this morning. And I got to tell you, it's a little chilly up here. What's up with the climate up here? And it's so funny that when you talk to folks, because I've been asked many times, hey, Colonel, hey, Congressman, do you believe in climate change? I'm like, yeah, winter, spring, summer, and fall. But that's not what people want to hear. But I think that one of the things that this industry has to understand is that there's a level of fanaticism that is out there that we have to deal with and we have to face. Now, what's my purpose in being here and talking with y'all? You know, I spent 22 years in the United States Army. I was an artillery officer and a paratrooper. And if you asked me to go in and break down the breech block of a howitzer or a multiple launch rocket system or anything like that, I couldn't do it. I couldn't, diagram out the wiring system. But I understood the physics. I understood the principles. I understood the tactics behind artillery. I could tell you how to take a projectile from this point and shoot it 15 kilometers downrange and hit a target within 50 meters. That was the standard. And then as a paratrooper, I ended up being a master-rated parachutist and also a jump master. I never had to pack anyone shoot, but I could tell you just by looking at a jumper that was rigged for combat equipment jump if his equipment was on properly. I could go through a sequence and I could tell you. And so my purpose here being with Ignite is not to sit down and talk about the composition of Ignite coal or talk about the lower carbon emissions of Ignite coal. I want to talk to you about the importance of 3 pillars of security for the United States of America. And those 3 pillars of security for the United States of America is economic security, it's energy security, and it's national security. And why do I put energy security in the middle? Or if you want to think of it as a triangle, the base is energy security. And national security and economic security come off of energy security, and they take you to the pinnacle, which is the independence of a nation. Now, think about this. You're the president of the United States of America, and you're about to come into office back in, 2021? And what's the very first thing that you want to do as the president of the United States of America? You're coming into office and the inflation rate in the United States of America is 1.4%. The average price of gasoline in the United States of America is about $2.39, 39 rather. And what's the first thing you do as the president of the United States of America? You cancel the Keystone XL pipeline and you start a war against your own energy security. See, for the first time, since I know, I'm 62, the United States of America was energy independent. We were able to produce, to consume, and export our own energy resources. And that wasn't because of the Department of Energy. How many people remember why we created the Department of Energy during the Saudi oil embargo? Come on now, y'all remember the even odd days on your license plate when you could only go out and get based upon the last number of your license plate. Well, Jimmy Carter and them created the Department of Energy to make the United States of America energy independent. Another failed government agency. But how did we become energy independent? We turned to you. We turned to the industry, and especially our fossil fuels. And we had innovation. We had revolutionary processes, fracking, things of this nature that exploded. And the next thing you know, we have the oil, we have the natural gas, we have the coal. We're able to sustain ourselves. And even down in Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, was the #1 port of exportation of liquefied natural gas. But all of a sudden, in 2021, someone comes into office and says the first thing I'm going to do is to destroy the energy security of the United States of America. And what has been the ramifications of that happening? What has been the ramifications of turning to our fossil fuel industry and demonizing you and making you public enemy #1? for the progressive socialist, leftist, socialist statists, Marxists. Well, think about this. When you all of a sudden increase the amount for moving supplies and moving goods and services, then guess what? If you're increasing that amount to move it, that increase of that price has to go to somebody. They're not just going to incur it themselves, or they're going to raise the prices, which is exactly what happened. We saw all of those different commodities go up in price. And so the next thing you know, because gas and oil and all of these things got punished, we saw those commodities go up. We saw the prices go up for energy. And then you look and see, the next thing you know, inflation in the United States of America had gone from 1.4% to 7.1%. And why do I bring out 7.1%? Because so many people say, well, it was Vladimir Putin's fault. Well, inflation was already at 7.1% before Vladimir Putin went into invading Ukraine. And from a national security perspective, why would Vladimir Putin go in and invade Ukraine? Because someone made the decision that they were not going to support their energy security, which affects your national security. And so therefore, Vladimir Putin saw an opportunity to get his oil and natural gas out there. And that is helping him to do all of the things that he is doing as a very strong dictator. But here in the United States of America, we continue to see the inflation go up. And even though the inflation is somewhere right now between 3.5 to 4%, that is still 3 times higher than it was back in January 2021. And look at the effects that it is having. Now, all of a sudden, we come up with this thing called Inflation Reduction Act. Trillions of dollars are spent. But when you peel the onion back on the Inflation Reduction Act, all it is doing is supporting a green energy New Deal, which means we're going to put more money into, someone already talked about, an unreliable source of energy. And that's wind and solar. Now, why can I say it's an unreliable source of energy? Because you had the guy that came up here, the CEO just recently, right before lunch. I live in Texas now. And 2 years ago in the winter, let me tell you something, I hate cold weather. You know why I hate cold weather? Because when I was in the Army, it seemed like every time we went to the field, it was cold. I don't care if it was July, they always put us in it and it got cold, or it was raining. I don't like cold weather. But all of a sudden, we saw the energy grid in Texas go dark. A state that has an abundance of oil, a state that has an abundance of natural gas, a state that has abundance of coal, and all of a sudden we can't keep the lights on. You saw that little graphic, he said that when you flip the switch, the light comes on. My youngest daughter was pregnant with our first grandson. The lights went out in her place for an entire week. She had to move back in with us. I had friends who lost their energy for weeks at a time. And in Conroe, Texas, a little boy, I think it was 8 or 9 years of age, froze to death in his parents' home. Can you imagine being the mother and father, putting blanket upon blanket upon blanket on your child to try to keep them warm, and your child freezes to death in the United States of America, in a state that is abundant with oil, natural gas, and coal? The wind turbines froze. And oh, by the way, it was so funny, so interesting. The week prior to that calamity, the governor of Texas received a Friend of Wind Energy Award. Because in Texas, we have given over 23 to 26% of our energy production to an unreliable source of energy, while we've been shutting down our coal-fired plants. When I was in Congress, I had a coal-fired plant in my district, and I fully supported them because it provided a lower cost of energy to people. You know, I drive a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Gladiator. I don't think solar panels will look good on my Rubicon Gladiator. And I'm certainly not putting wind turbines and fans on my Rubicon Gladiator. But yet, I'm being told, as a citizen of the United States of America, that in a few years, I will be forced to buy a certain type of vehicle. Oh, and in buying that certain type of vehicle, guess who we end up helping? Not just from the economic side, but from the national security side. As we degrade our own energy security, we're supporting our number one geopolitical foe, which is China. Most of the batteries, China. The wind turbine blades, China. And oh, by the way, if you ever get a chance to go down to Del Rio, Texas, right there on the border, there's an Air Force base called Shepherd Air Force Base. It is the preeminent training facility for F-35 Raptor pilots. And guess who just recently bought a large swath of land right next to Shepherd Air Force Base? A person that was formerly an officer in the People's Liberation Army of China. What was his justification for needing to buy this incredible swath of land right next to Shepherd Air Force Base? He wanted to put in a wind turbine farm. And we allowed him to do that. This is how, if we don't protect our energy security, what we have, our resources ourselves, it not only hurts us economically, it hurts us from a national security perspective. And when I look at and think about this ESG, which the gentleman just talked about, how many people here have heard about the Corporate Equity Index? There are people on the other side that are grading corporations as far as their adherence to this ESG. And what does this ESG do? It puts us further and further behind with our energy production and our energy security. But coming back to this issue about inflation, and you create this Inflation Reduction Act, which is more so a green energy, boondoggle. So now the Federal Reserve sees that, inflation is not going to go down on itself because we continue to have the government overspending and spending $33 trillion in debt. The net interest of the debt of the United States of America is almost larger than our defense budget. We should not be in that position. $2 trillion of deficit spending every single budget cycle year. That's what happens when you don't focus on your energy security, which helps your economic security. And now the Fed comes in and they say, we got to raise interest rates. Well, guess who ends up getting hurt by raising of the interest rates from an economic security perspective? It's not the big banks. It's not Jamie Dimon, who, by the way, he takes trips over to China and talks to those guys. It's our small community banks. Because as the interest rates go up, they're not able to pay those interest rates on borrowed money, and therefore who gets affected by that? It's the small business owner. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the United States of America. 75 to 80% of our economy is small business owners. If you take away that lifeblood because they cannot afford the interest rates being this high, and the interest rates are going to continue to be high because we have a government that is not paying attention to our economic security because they're undermining our energy security, then what ends up happening? We're heading toward a financial, fiscal collapse in America because we're not focusing and getting back to realizing that the true independence of a country comes from its ability to support itself with its own energy resources. I want you to think about World War II. Why was Adolf Hitler in Romania in World War II? It was the Ploesti oil fields. Can you understand how important that energy resource was? Why did Japan get pissed off at us in World War II and decided they were going to bomb Pearl Harbor? Because we cut off shipments of oil and coal. We were going to economically starve them out, energy starve them out. And what are we doing to ourselves? We're starving our own selves out when it comes to our energy independence. I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan, one of the greatest debacles that we will ever know from a strategic, operational, and tactical level. But the more important thing is that you just turned over that country with all the raw materials that it has over to your number one geopolitical foe. Because you're not focused on your own energy security, and you want to force people to go out there and buy these electric vehicles. When I got picked up yesterday from the airport, I asked the young lady, she had one of them big Chevrolet Suburbans. I said, do y'all have a lot of electric vehicles up here in North Dakota? She said, oh, heck no. Electric vehicles ain't going to make it up here. This whole push about electric vehicles, It's about restricting your freedom of maneuver and freedom of movement. I want you to think about something. With a socialist, centrally controlled economic theory, the first tenet is welfare redistribution. The second tenet of a socialist economic model is to nationalize economic production. And that's what is happening in the United States of America. And where have we seen this recently with the energy sector? Venezuela. Venezuela used to be one of the most prosperous countries in this hemisphere. Oil and gas reserves that you can't imagine. But then Hugo Chavez comes in and nationalizes all that. That's exactly what's happening here in the United States of America. And what's furthermore insulting is that with all the resources that we have here, as far as energy, we're going over to all of these other different countries. We're selling out raw materials to the Chinese. And we're going to tell people that they have to buy electric vehicles. We're going over and we're begging Saudi Arabia, hat in hand. What do? They cut oil production. We're going down to Venezuela, who has a worse level of crude, a dirtier level of crude. We're not doing anything about it. Look at what has happened with our strategic petroleum reserve. Last time I checked, we were 17 days for the strategic petroleum reserve of the United States of America. 60% degradation. Why? Because when you're undermining your energy security, your base, because you want to move toward this unreliable source. And then all of a sudden you want to try to trick the American people and believe that everything is okay. Well, you're going to pump out of the strategic petroleum reserve to basically tell people that gas is going down, maybe 2 or 3 cents. But now we see it creeping back up. And oh, by the way, from a national security perspective, why would we take our strategic petroleum reserve meant for the United States of America and sell it to our number one geopolitical foe? That's the insanity that is going on here in the United States of America. Iran, the number one state sponsor of Islamic terrorism. We just remembered the Beirut bombing that happened, some almost 35 years ago. Iran came out and admitted, yep, we did it, after we gave them $6 billion, which is not going to go toward the betterment of the Iranian citizens. It's going to go back to supporting Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and all of the other groups that they support. And oh, by the way, now that we've lifted sanctions off of them, Iran is shipping oil and resources over to China, just the same as Russia is doing. That is the critical aspect of your energy security. If you want to undermine what Vladimir Putin is doing in Ukraine, it's not about us writing a blank check over to them. This is about us going back and making ourselves energy independent so that we can produce, consume, and export these resources. We should not just be firing up more coal-fired plants in the United States of America. We should be exporting that coal. We should be exporting the liquefied natural gas. We should be exporting the oil. All of these things that we have right here in this country that God has blessed us with. But if we don't change this policy direction, and oh, by the way, did you hear what just came out from the Biden administration? The Biden administration has just said that no member of the Biden administration, if invited, can go to a fossil fuel conference in the United States of America. So if you had invited a far better speaker than I am, Secretary of Energy Granholm, to be here, she would have said, nope. How can we achieve energy independence? How can we make sure that we are economically secure and our national security is strong if we're saying to each and every one of you that are out there every single day, making sure that when you flip that switch on, the lights come on, we don't want you. We're saying to all of the workers out there in your industry, we don't want you. We would rather have you be dependent upon the government because it is all about wealth redistribution. It is all about economic dependency. It's not about economic independence. It is all about power and control. The challenge that we have to realize is that they're very serious about this. And this election cycle coming up, I know so many times people say this. this is the most important election cycle of our lives. This really is. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about Republican or Democrat anymore. This is about competing philosophies of governments. This is about competing principles and values. The United States of America was founded on a principle that the individual is sovereign. The United States of America was founded understanding that your freedoms, your liberties, your rights are more important than anything else, definitely more important than the institution of government. But yet we're completely violating that. When you have people that are telling you that there's a certain type of stove you can have in your house, when you have people that are telling you there's a certain type of dishwasher you can have in your house, they're telling you what type of car you can have, all of these controlling aspects, which is really affecting our freedom of movement and our freedom of maneuver. You know, he was right when he talked about how once upon a time more people were concentrated in the rural areas. Now they're more so concentrated in the urban areas. And they want more people concentrated in the urban areas. And they don't want you out in these rural areas because they believe that as long as they can have you in those areas, they can control you. They can control your means of transportation. I mean, you talk about electric reliability. I mean, now they have these smart thermostats that are out there that, you know, it may be a hot day in Texas and you want to set the thermostat in your house at 72, but you can't. Because somebody somewhere out there, you know, the one that made our phones go buzzing, all of a sudden your thermostat is set at 76. We've got to wake up in America. And we've got to understand the situation in which we find ourselves. And your industry has to go on offense. You can't sit back and allow the narrative to be dictated by the fanatics. You know, I love University of Tennessee. I love my alma mater. And I want to thank you all, my other alma mater, Kansas State University. Thank you for giving us that North Dakota State University coach to come down and be our head coach. We appreciate that. But I am not going to glue myself to a wall for the University of Tennessee. I'm not going to go out and take some orange paint and I'm going to throw it on, you know, pieces of art. I'm not going to chain myself on the ground and try to stop traffic because I love University of Tennessee football. But the people on the other side, that's how radical they are. If you want to talk about extremism, this is like a new religion for them, this whole climate change thing. And if you don't jump in and get on board with it, they're going to persecute you, they're going to prosecute you. And so it's so important that the energy sector in the United States of America, the fossil fuel sector in the United States of America, you got to tell your story. If you don't tell your story, they will. So here I got a couple of recommendations that I want to see you all do as you go forward. Number one, more TV ads. I remember that there were some TV ads out there that said, I'm an energy voter. You need to start getting TV ads out there to talk about being an energy voter. And you need to talk about the unreliability of wind and solar. You need to talk about the fundamental basis of oil, gas, and coal in the United States of America and what it provides to the everyday American citizen. Not the West Coast or East Coast elitists that want to drive around in a fancy little $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 electric vehicle. I don't want one, can't afford one, ain't gonna have it. I mean, think about when they tried to make a Harley Davidson electric motorcycle. Who the hell wants a Harley electric? I mean, I used to ride motorcycles. Maybe y'all know 3 years ago I had a horrific, accident. I should not be here. I got hit on Interstate 35 going 75 miles an hour. But when I flipped the engine on my motorcycle, I didn't want to hear buzz. I wanted everyone to know I'm coming. I wish that person that hit me had known I was coming. But that electric motorcycle failed. You've got to start talking about who you are and what you do and what your industry provides. We're over there pumping money and supporting China and that dirty coal that they have. Why aren't we supporting the coal that we have here in the United States of America? The second thing you got to do, videos. I see young people sitting over there. Young people like videos. And it was absolutely right. If you're on social media, you need to be out there putting things out on social media. And not too long, 2.5 to 3 minutes. I'm sorry, young people, but that's about your attention span. Am I right? 2.5, 3 minutes. After that, they're shut down. They're going somewhere else, okay? But you've got to connect with young people. Why do you need to connect with young people? What just happened next door to you in Montana? Some young people brought a lawsuit in the state of Montana saying that they were adversely affected by climate change, and the judge in Montana ruled for them in that case. You know, how? What is wrong? It's freaking cold in Montana in the winter. What do you think it's going to be? But yet, this is the delusion that is going on. So you've got to get out there on video. Radio ads, real simple. I was out there with Mr. Hennon this morning. I mean, you've got to get on radio. You got to tell your story 24/7, 365. You got to bombard them because, yes, they own the microphone, but you've got to be insurgents when it comes to protecting your energy security. The next thing I want you to do, engage your employees. When I was a commander, how many people here served in the military? Soldiers, sailors, air Marines. Thank you so much for your service. We really appreciate it. Y'all remember the barracks lawyers? Remember the knuckleheads in the barracks that, you know, they always knew better than the commander? Well, you got barracks lawyers. You got those kind of people in your businesses, in your industry. And you've got to go out there and talk to your employees so they understand the decisions that you are having to make. They have to understand, we talked about the regulatory environment that you're in. Your employees need to understand that regulatory environment. I'm not talking about talking to them so that their eyes glaze over the head. But when I stood out in front of my 600 troops and I talked to them and I had them understand why I was tough on them, why I was asking them to learn infantry tactics, even though we were an artillery unit. Because when they got to Iraq and we were told to park our artillery pieces and to perform infantry tasks, they were ready. They were smoking Al-Qaeda. They were smoking people left and right. And they felt good about it. But if you're not having that level of communication with your employees, if all of a sudden your employees are going back, and I'll be very honest, they listen to CNN, they listen to MSNBC, and they listen to all these other people demonize you and demonize who you are and demonize your industry, they're going to end up voting against their own interests. So you got to talk to your employees. You got to make them shareholders. You got to make them stakeholders in what you're doing. So they're not going out there saying, oh, yeah, you know, I'm on climate change and all this stuff. We need more EVs. We need more wind and solar. Okay, you're going to be out of a job. What are you going to do next? The next thing, how many people here know the importance of the 10th Amendment in the Constitution of the United States of America? Yes, no, anybody? Okay, well, let me help you out. Okay, I'll read the 10th Amendment to you. It's over here. Because, see, this is your American Express credit card. You should not leave home without it. It's a Declaration of Independence in the United States Constitution. You don't understand this, you're not a citizen in a constitutional republic. America is not a democracy, it's a constitutional republic. We have a system of a representative democracy, which is the means by which you elect people. But let me read to you the 10th Amendment, why it's so important, especially to this industry. Let me find it here. Take some time. I'm getting there. All right, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I'm sure everybody in North Dakota knows what the Second Amendment is. Okay. The 10th Amendment, okay? The powers not delegated to the United States, being the federal government, by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. You had the Public Utilities Commissioner talk about EPA regulations. Show me in the Constitution where the federal government has enumerated power for an EPA. Show me in the Constitution where, you know, people can take their ideological agenda and use a federal government agency to restrict and restrain what a state is doing, legally and lawfully, which is promoting their energy resources, like a state like North Dakota. We've got to understand these things, and we have to challenge the other side on these things. We have to restore something that is called federalism. How many people understand what federalism is? Federalism is the thing by which we get the federal government in the right box. If you read the Declaration of Independence, it says that these United States of America were created by free and independent states, not the other way around. That's why the founding fathers put the 9th and 10th Amendment in there as closing out the individual Bill of Rights. But right now, we've got states that are just being overrun by the ideological agenda of the federal government, the bureaucratic administrative state. But you've got the standing by way of the rule of law to say, hold, time out. You can't do these things. And so as your council starts to look and say, you can't come down with these silly regulations. Show me in the Constitution where you have that enumerated power to do so. That's how we have to start challenging this system. Number 4, create more apprenticeships and educational programs for young people. Because the young people are in these schools and they're not getting the proper education, they're getting an indoctrination. So you need to have these young people show up over the summertime or whenever they can, whenever you want to have them, and you need to teach them and get them to understand what is really going on in the coal industry, the natural gas industry, the oil industry, our energy sector. And in doing so, you're training up the next generation that will come in and backfill you. Because right now, we've got these young people like you saw over in Montana bringing a lawsuit saying they're being adversely affected by climate change. Whether that be the case, every soldier or Marine could say, I've been adversely affected by climate change because every time I went out into the field, the weather sucked. But how absurd this is. You've got to, again, go on offense. You've got to take control of this thing. You've got a message, especially to our young people. When you have people that say, I don't want to have a child, I don't want to have a family because the world's going to end. I think it was AOC that said that the world was going to end like a couple of years ago or 12 years ago or something. Al Gore said it was going to end in like 10 years or whatever. We're still here. But if we don't start educating our kids, if we don't get them engaged and involved in this industry, we don't tell them how important our energy security is, then our economic security is going to collapse and our national security is going to collapse. And the last thing, secure your facilities. Let me say it again. Secure your facilities. And why do I say this? I've been to the border 16 different times. The last time I was on the border was the month of August. I've been involved in chasing down illegal immigrants because I was honorarily deputized in Kenny County. I was involved in bringing in 12 illegal immigrants. 6 to 7 million people coming into the United States of America illegally is an invasion. But when you have 1 to 1.5 million, you don't know who they are, you don't know where they are. When you look at the news and the videos showing the people that are coming to this country illegally, focus on the amount of single military age males that are coming into this country. And now Chinese single military age males. Xi Jinping just recently sent a little note over to Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, congratulating him on infiltrating his army into the United States of America. Secure your facilities. Because if I want to hurt the United States of America, it's not about going after some buildings in New York anymore. It's about taking out your power grid. So that what we saw happen in the winter in Texas a couple of years ago could be replicated across the United States of America. And we're not prepared for that. I mean, you know, once upon a time, people went out and they hunted to eat, right? Y'all still hunt to eat, right? But now you can just go on a nap, sitting in your pajamas in your house and say, bring me some food from Walmart or Kroger or whatever. This is how freaking lazy we gotten. We don't even want to get off our ass and go out there and go to the grocery store. Not to mention go out and hunt for our own food. So what the Sam Hill you think is going to happen in the United States of America if a power grid goes down? People in Texas freaked the hell out. They didn't know what to do. The enemy saw that. So secure your facilities. But leave out of here today remembering that what you do is so important. We don't need another generation of young men and women having to go to the Middle East to provide security and stability for us to get our energy resources. We have the resources here. You are more important than a lot of the soldiers and sailors and airmen, Marines and Coast Guardsmen and Space Force Guardians out there, because you are helping to make this country go. Without you, we go into a dark age. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see the nationalization of our energy sector like we have seen in Venezuela. But we're so close. And that's why you got to understand the 3 pillars of security: economic, energy, and national. And the most important one is energy security. So God bless you all. What are your questions?
I think you touched on it a little bit, sir. Do you think Europe has learned its lesson from relying on Russia? Or do you think that they're going to go right back to him after the...
No, I don't think Europe has learned its lesson. And I will tell you, when you look at Europe, you've got old Europe and new Europe. And what do I mean by old Europe? That is Western Europe. And they have gone down this path. I don't know if they can turn it around. The immigration issue has hurt them. The fact that you have people in Germany a couple of winters ago going out into the forest, chopping down trees to get wood to warm themselves. But if you recently saw the testimony at the European Union, I think it was the Prime Minister or someone from Poland, Eastern Europe gets it. They do not want to go back under centralized control, and they understand the importance of controlling their borders. They understand the importance of being energy secure and energy independent. And that's why we can be an incredible help in being able to be that bulwark that keeps them from having to lean over and trust and depend on Russia. That pipeline that Germany has agreed to with Russia, it's unconscionable that they would do that, because Russia does not have, Putin does not have their best intent as far as Western Europe. So I think it's so important that we have an energy policy, again, producing, consuming, and exporting the resources that we have. If you want to talk about an energy NATO, I think that's something we need to look at. I didn't do that good, did I? All right, I know some, okay. What do I think about what happened on Capitol Hill yesterday with I know someone sitting out there, should I ask him? Let me talk to you about this. There's one constitutionally mandated duty for the Congress of the United States of America. That's to produce a budget. And regular order when it comes to producing the budget, which, like I said, constitutionally mandated, every year they're supposed to do this, means you're supposed to pass 12 different appropriations bills. Now go back and look at when was the last time both the House and the Senate passed 12 different appropriations bills, reconciled them together, and then sent it over to the president. It just doesn't happen. They continue on with the continuing resolution nonsense, then the omnibus spending bill, which will happen sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and the next thing you know, we continue to be $40 trillion in debt. I know Kevin McCarthy personally. He was there as the majority whip when I served. Good guy, but he's more of a hand-grabbing schmoozer type, not a leader type. He should have understood back in January that he had to stick to regular order. How many of you all can go home and get paid if you don't get your job done? Anybody? Anybody? So how is it that you know that you're sitting there, you only have one appropriations bill that has been passed in the House of Representatives, the Senate has no appropriations bills that have been passed, and you take a 30 to 40 day recess? And then you come back in September, when you only got about, let's say 14 to 15 legislative days, and you think in 14 to 15 legislative days, you're going to get 11 appropriations bills passed, when up to that point, you only got one done? That's what happened. And so he is a bit culpable in what happened. Now, Matt Gaetz, not a big fan. I'll be real honest. And one of the things that I never liked in the military, how many of you all would hang out with a person that would drop a hand grenade on their foot? That's stuck on stupid. So now all of a sudden you do something, but you don't have any plan. And so next week we're going to come back around. We're going to go back to the thing that happened in January, where we go through 15 different iterations to try to find someone to be a speaker. Let me tell you what the military taught me. Any idiot can come up and say there's something wrong, but a leader always has a solution. And take that with you back in your industry. When a knucklehead comes up to you with, what is it, Dr. Smith, Lost in Space, warning Will Robinson and everything, say, stop. What's your solution? That's part of you talking to your employees to get them thinking, critical thinking skills. That's why we need to involve our young people, critical thinking skills. There's no critical thinking that is going on Capitol Hill right now. And as I told Mr. Hennon there on the radio today, the United States of America right now in this moment in time is leaderless. That is not a good position for the greatest nation that the world has ever known to be in. Our borders are being overrun. We're undermining our own energy independence. Our fiscal house is nowhere near in order. Our foreign policy is a joke, it's abysmal. And no one is at the helm of the ship. That's why we have got to get engaged. Each and every one of you has a responsibility. Benjamin Franklin, when he was asked, September the 17th, 1787, y'all know what that date was? September 17, 1787? You want me to do the Ferris Bueller thing, right? Bueller, anyone? That's Constitution Day. When they came out of Constitution Hall, Independence Hall, Benjamin Franklin was met by a woman by the name of Mrs. Powell. She was a Philadelphia socialite. She asked him a question. She said, well, doctor, what is it that we have? A monarchy or a republic? Benjamin Franklin replied, a republic if you can keep it. The reason why we're in the situation that we're in the United States of America, when you have people that are supposedly your elected representatives and they don't even know that we live in a republic, that's our fault. So we have got to take responsibility. We've got to correct this situation here in the United States of America. Let me just tell you my story. I'm 62 years of age. On February the 7th of 1961, I was born in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia, in a blacks-only hospital. 50 years later, I was the congressional representative of Fort Lauderdale Beach and Palm Beach Island. Now, why is that so important? Because when I was born in 1961, blacks could not go on Fort Lauderdale Beach, nor could they go on Palm Beach Island. But because of what my mother and father taught me, my dad always said, find out what the standard is and exceed it. Don't ever see yourself as a victim. We have got to start training that message in our culture and our society today. Too many people in America want to be a victim. And when you want to be a victim, someone is always there to victimize you. And you lose your freedoms and your liberties and what have you. I've been to 13 different countries, 3 different combat zones. Nothing beats the land of the all-night 7-Eleven and Denny's. This is an awesome place that we have here. But if we don't take the responsibility ourselves to start talking about this in our homes, that's where it starts first and foremost. Remember what Joshua said, as for me and my house, as for you and your house, you got to start reasserting yourself as the adult in your house and in your church, in your community, and everywhere. You got to have these discussions. You have to reassert yourself as a leader in your industry. Because right now, we are in danger of leaving less to our children and grandchildren than was left to us. And to me, that's unacceptable. So that's the challenge that each and every one of us has. And this is serious business because there are people out there that want to take us in a completely different direction. And you cannot allow that to happen. In 62 years, I went from being born in a blacks-only hospital to being a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. My dad was just a corporal in World War II. My older brother was a lance corporal in the Marine Corps in Vietnam, a member of the United States House of Representatives. Mar-a-Lago was in the district that I represented. Rush Limbaugh was one of my constituents. And now I'm standing here before you all in North Dakota. North freaking Dakota. The kid that was born in an inner city black hospital. And I'm the only person here with a permanent tan. Now, how freaking awesome is that? That's what we need to be talking about. And we need to restore our energy security so that we can talk about it in the light and not in the darkness. God bless you all.